Good evening, my name is Kacper Paradowski and you're watching Poland Daily News. As reported by Rzeczpospolita, Poland could be subject to a penalty of €2 million per day if it doesn't freeze the work of its Disciplinary Chamber of the Supreme Court, a new body established under the Conservative government's judicial reform. The daily newspaper writes that the draft decision of the Vice President of the Court of Justice of the European Union to take an interim measure against the Polish government is ready and may be announced next week.
The issue concerns the suspension of the statutory provisions on the Supreme Court in connection with Article 9A of the Act on the National Council of the Judiciary. According to the findings of Rzeczpospolita, the execution of the order is to be associated with a very high financial sanction.
If infringement is to be found, the court shall order the Republic of Poland to pay to the Commission a penalty payment of at least €2 million per day from the date of the Republic of Poland receiving of this order until such time when that member state has complied with this order or until the judgment in case C79119 is delivered.
In mid-January, the European Commission applied to the Court of Justice of the European Union for an interim measure on the disciplinary system of judges. This is the possibility to freeze the Supreme Court Act on the Disciplinary Chamber so that the chamber does not function until the Court of Justice of the European Union ruling.
These are the costs we're going to pay for the lack of dialogue and the kind of reform we are carrying out. It's a shame because this money could have been used in a much better way. Sometimes when it comes to the judgment of the Court of Justice of the European Union, different types of financial penalties are imposed, but please note that there is a two-stage procedure. It is not that the CJEU will issue a judgment and then they can start collecting the money. There has to be a move from the European Commission with regards to the implementation proposal for this financial penalty.
The European Commission challenged the disciplinary system of judges at the European Court last year. The Polish government has to present an explanation in the Disciplinary Chamber until February 13th.
All of the candidates for the President of Poland have officially started their election campaigns. It seems that the main rival of the current president, Andrzej Duda, in the upcoming presidential election will be the Civic Platform Party candidate Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska.
The main rival of President Andrzej Duda in the upcoming Polish presidential elections will be the Civic Platform candidate Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska. The Civic Platform candidate Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska, the New Left candidate Robert Biedroń, and the Confederation candidate Krzysztof Bosak officially started the election campaigns.
It is obvious that Andrzej Duda will win 40% of the votes, but who is going to be in second place? That is still an open matter. The support for Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska will be gradually decreasing, and that means that the support for other candidates will increase. I hope that Krzysztof Bosak will get at least a dozen% of support. Robert Biedroń will get a dozen% of the votes as well. In order to cross the electoral threshold, he would have to get 1% more support than the other candidates.
Andrzej Duda will officially start his election campaign next Saturday, February 15th, during the convention of the Law and Justice Party.
I am convinced that the majority of the Polish citizens will vote for Mr. President Andrzej Duda and that they want him to continue his term of office.
The inauguration of the election campaign of the Polish People's Party will be held near the city of Rzeszów at the end of February. According to the calendar published on the website of the National Electoral Commission, the candidatures can be submitted until March 26th.
Residents and local business owners in a French ski resort where 5 coronavirus cases have been confirmed say they are concerned about the lack of information coming from authorities. 5 British nationals, including a child, have been diagnosed with the new coronavirus in Contaminet-Montargis, and health officials say they were trying to determine who else the group came into contact with, including at local schools. In total, a group of 11 people, including the 5 who have tested positive, have been hospitalized and are being examined after sharing lodgings in late January with a British man believed to have contracted the virus in Singapore, the health ministry said. We found out about the coronavirus cases here after arrival and we don't have any intention to leave because of that. We are not worried. We have invested in some very basic protective equipment such as gel and that's it. We only hope that they will confine the resort and put under a blockade so we will be able to enjoy the slopes all alone. We will be alone and enjoy our holidays. Local resident Beatrice Louvier is the mother of a 10-year-old girl who was in the same classroom with a British child who fell sick due to the coronavirus. She said parents need more updates on this issue to reassure their children who might feel anxious about contracting the disease.
Ma fille est dans la classe du petit garçon qui...
My daughter was in the same classroom as the little boy who contracted the coronavirus. What we really condemn as parents of pupils, and I here speak as a spokesperson for other parents, is that we haven't received any information either from the school or from the city hall on what we should do now. We went to the city hall where they told us that we would get the information by tonight, but the information has been aired at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we haven't received any further information on what we should do.
Sur les antennes, on n'a pas plus d'informations sur ce que l'on doit faire.
According to regional health official Jean-Yves Graul, that school and another in the area that provided French lessons would be temporarily closed next week. Conservative Switzerland, unlike many of its Western European neighbours, does not yet have laws that criminalise so-called hate speech against lesbians, gays and bisexuals. This seems to be changing today as partial results from a referendum on the matter show around 60% of voters were in favour of the new law.
When 41-year-old Jehan, a lesbian, was insulted by a man for supporting LGBT rights during a tram ride in the Swiss city of Geneva last month, he threatened to call the police. However, the man who opposed LGBT rights said that his remarks were not a crime under Swiss law.
Et là, il continue les insultes du genre...
And then he continued his insults, saying things like "this bitch of a dyke," they shouldn't exist. I turned around and kindly told him that his remarks have no place, are reprehensible, and that if he continues, I'm going to call the police or file a complaint. At that point, he said to me, "In any case, I can insult you as much as I like. Your shitty law hasn't yet passed." The man was strictly correct. However, the government hopes to change that. The parliament passed a law in 2018 to extend anti-racism statutes to cover sexual orientation, and offenders could be jailed for up to 3 years. Free speech activists who say that similar laws already exist for threats and harassment warn that the new law will muzzle people who oppose LGBT ideology.
Sexuality
is an issue we should be able to discuss absolutely freely, including all sexual orientations, especially heterosexuality. So if a law prevents that because we use certain terms or because we risk a sentence of being accused by a court, then that means that thoughts are censored and people will think twice before speaking, and that isn't good for freedom. We want to preserve the freedom of vote and the freedom of thought in Switzerland.
Incomplete results from the afternoon show that 60.5% of the voters have cast their ballot in favor of the new law.
That is all for tonight. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for Poland Daily Business. Good night.